Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to give it about another minute before we get started. See some people joining in now, so we'll let those additional stragglers come on through the webinar, and then we'll get going here. Okay, I still see some people joining, but we'll go ahead and get started. Andrew, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to More for Apps presentation, looking at the dark secrets of Web ADI. I'm Andrew Gooch. I'll just start off with a little bit of background on me so you know who I am. I've been with More for Apps now for about 15 years. My current role is focusing on pre-sales, explaining to customers what our offerings are, and helping with the adoption of any solutions they might want to implement. My background's technical. I have had various development and DBA roles going back to 11i days, but more recently I've been more on the functional side. So I've got a little bit of an exposure to many of the problems you'll be facing here with data integration. Right, so this is what we'll be covering today. A bit of a problem with the slide there. I'll start with More for Apps first up to explain who we are. And then I'll briefly discuss the challenges we face with data entry and what we're trying to solve when we're using Web ADI. So we'll look a little bit at Web ADI, the offerings there, discussing some of the strengths and weaknesses. And we'll stop briefly in the middle of that to get some feedback from you all, just for reasons really what's bringing you to the audience, what problems or not just problems, but what aspects of Web ADI have got your business impacted. And after that, we'll look at the More for Apps solutions, and I'll try to give you a little bit of a sense of what those are all about. And then at the end, there should be a bit of time for a Q&A session. So please save your questions to then. I'm hoping we can run through the presentation without interruptions if possible, and then we'll deal with all of those questions all at once at the end. But let's start with More for Apps. So who's More for Apps? Why would you want to listen to what we have to say? Well, the company was formed quite a while ago now, about 20 years ago, to address the limitations with data entry performance in the Oracle ERP, which was 11i in those days, later became eBusiness Suite. And we provide a range of tools in this space under the EBS Toolbox banner. And our experience over the years has helped our tools become pretty much the benchmark for spreadsheet-based loading into Oracle. Nowadays, with Cloud Fusion, we have a new suite of offerings there under that ERP Cloud Toolbox banner. But the focus today will be EBS Toolbox. And there's, as you can see, a wide variety of areas within EBS that are supported there. But we'll start at the beginning. The bread and butter of any ERP is data, but that data needs to come from somewhere. And how we get it in will have a great impact on its usefulness, especially if we have slow or inaccurate entry mechanisms. It's not really any good if we don't have it in the system when we need it. And there are two main things about data which are always going to be paramount. Obviously, the first one is accuracy. It needs to be clean and trustworthy, and it needs to be complete. And that also means entered in the required timeframes. But if you don't have data entry mechanisms which can keep up with your requirements, you're going to run into problems, bottlenecks, basically. And if you have bottlenecks, that's going to ultimately limit your ability to run your business properly. So how do we get that data in? Well, organizations have a variety of sources of information, And the end goal is to get that into Oracle so we can generate our documents, our invoices, orders, and so on to drive our reporting and gather our revenue. And the standard approach for entering it is with the data entry forms on the user side. The other main one is the IT-centric solution, which is going to provide a data directly interface to Oracle. Now, user forms are going to be sufficient for low volumes, but they do take time and manpower, whereas IT-driven solutions have the potential to be really efficient, but that performance comes at a price. They're costly to set up and maintain. So there's downsides to both of those options. But there's a third way, if you like, which a lot of organizations find appealing, and that's the solutions that use a spreadsheet as a collection tool rather than a data form. And that makes a lot of sense. Excel is easy to understand. It's a tool that's been around for a long time. Everybody knows it. And we don't need a lot of training to get it running. So why the appeal? Well, if we look at the detail of the forms approach, you can see the main problem. Entering complex data in data forms is not straightforward. End users have to navigate deep into entry forms and then out again for each element. And because a lot of that data is hidden behind sub-level forms, it's not really that easy to get a clear picture of what is actually in there. And while you're doing all that, you're not adding any value. If you're bogged down with data entry, you're not doing any analysis, you're not free to do anything with that data, just trying to keep your head above water, keeping the system up to date. So the spreadsheet option is much better. You get a wide visibility of your data. You can see everything in one sheet. There are rows and rows of capacity to load lots of things at once. And then you get those nice features like copy and paste to accelerate your data entry. Plus, spreadsheets are already in digital format, so you can fill them up from other digital sources relatively easily. And that's all going to help you reduce your data entry timeframes. So Oracle agrees, and they've given us the solution, Web ADI. And this comes in two flavors, really. Firstly, the seeded Web ADI integrators, or templates. And there are over 300 of those available in 12.2 and later. Or you can develop your own custom templates, which means create your own integrators within the Web ADI framework. But that means you're going to have an in-house expert or an external consultant available to maintain them. So let's start by thinking about the process flow for importing with Web ADI. It's going to look something like this. I download the template and pretty much start the loop. I add the data to the worksheet, upload it to Oracle. Generally, I'll need to kick off an interface program, an import of some type, which I'll have to monitor. And then when it's finished, I'll have to review the results and hope for the green squares or the little happy faces to come back to the spreadsheet. Sometimes even having those little happy faces isn't enough. So to be sure my data loaded as expected, I'm going to need to review the Oracle transactions or the import report in Oracle. And when there are errors, that starts a sort of fiddly operation to determine the reasons behind them and then to work out what corrections I'm going to need before I go back, put those corrections into the spreadsheet and start the process off again. So you've already really identified a bit of a problem here. There's lots of steps. There's lots of switching between Oracle and the spreadsheet. Sometimes you're going to need more than one person for that. And you have to repeat the process each time you encounter a problem, which can mean a lot of rinse and repeat. And if you have complex areas like anything to do with headers and lines, attachments, or flex fields, it could get a bit complicated. Now, Web ADI is not a new product, quite the opposite, really. So I'm guessing this audience isn't here to be given some sort of marketing presentation on all its finer points. More likely, you're an audience of current users who are struggling with it in one aspect or another. So why would that be? We'd be quite interested to find out. So we've got a polling question we'd like you to answer for us. Hopefully, Stephanie can put that up in a second. Maybe just submit the one or two aspects of Web ADI that are causing you trouble or have brought you into the audience here today. I won't read out the options, but we'll just give you guys a couple of minutes to put some feedback into there, and we'll just talk about what we see. I think the results are visible to the audience, so hopefully that'll make things a bit easier.
Andrew will give everyone about a minute here to complete that, and then I'll go ahead and share the results.
Champion. Well, you just let me know when you're ready. I'll have a little drink of my tea. It's already quite interesting reading.
All right, looks like we're slowing down. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Yeah, so I mean, that's interesting. That sort of corresponds to what we sort of gather from the people we talk to that are coming to us. Those last two on the list there about patching, the last two, oh, they're in the middle there, and the Excel versions. That's a headache that a lot of people are getting, and the reason why a lot of people have come to us. And yeah, I can see some functionality missing. It's a really interesting result set, actually. It'd be good, I don't know, Stephanie, if we can somehow scrape that out, send that on to the audience at the end, because I think people find that interesting to just mull over.
Yeah, sounds good. We can send that out tomorrow with the recording.
Yeah, there are a few people who say we don't use it and we don't have any problems, but generally it's a lacking of functionality or just awkward usability or problems with patching. And we're going to touch on all of those points towards the end. So do I close that down? How do I get that? Do I just click on the X?
Yep, go ahead and close that down. I stopped sharing the results, and like I said, we'll share those out with everyone.
Okay, right. Well, hopefully that didn't break it. I've clicked on close. Right, so let's move on the presentation. It's good feedback too, by the way. Everyone, I appreciate taking your time to write those results down. Well, any analysis of Web ADI, how it works or doesn't work, is assuming that we have a Web ADI template for the data entry we're trying to achieve. As I mentioned, there's about 300 templates in 12.2 and beyond in multiple areas. And with so many there, you might think that there's quite a lot of support. But the reality is that a lot of those templates aren't very popular, or they're part of pretty niche applications, price management, yard management. And there's not a lot of people that will find those useful. I'm sure people use them, but they're not going to help the wider community all that much. So when you go looking, you're likely to find that the template you need isn't available. And in that situation, you start thinking about custom templates, building a development path, engaging consultants, all that stuff. And then at the end of that, that solution is likely to be pretty specific to your current setup. So if today I implement a template with Web ADI for some data area, and then tomorrow I implement a new descriptive fix field, then it's not going to be supported. And if we come back, I'll come back to it in a minute, but that problem with patching rears its head. So your custom solution is likely to be tied to your specific version and patch level within Oracle, which means generally when patching, you're going to need to redevelop those personalizations, afterwards. And that obviously leads to problems in a dynamic ERP, doesn't it? With shifting sands of usage and requirements. But focusing on the 300 that are there for you now, we can evaluate them to some extent and look at their usefulness. And the most useful to the wider community fall within these 7 applications. And each has its own level of support. I don't know if you can see it. There are numbers, tiny little numbers in each of those hexagons. But those raw numbers don't really tell the full picture. And we'll take a little bit closer of a look to see what useful seeded templates are in each of those. I'll run through them quite quickly, starting with projects. There are 7 templates there, and 4 of them are for budgets. And they're mostly the same. They're just aimed at different types of budgets. I'm talking about periodic, non-periodic, and so on. There's 2 for creating transactions, and that other one is quite specific to connections with Microsoft projects. And that's it. So there's nothing there to create or maintain projects, tasks, any of the setup. Within HR, there's quite a lot of templates. We counted 88, but a lot of them actually aren't all that usable, or they're related to localizations or very niche requirements. And if you inspect them closer, a lot of them aren't really ideal even for the simple tasks that they look to be aligned with. Manufacturing is a similar scenario. Again, the templates aren't particularly useful for general usage. In fact, all the 52 templates that are there are for fixing errors on interface tables, not to upload data. So really, if you need anything in manufacturing, you'll need to develop it. Purchasing is the same story, but they've got nice names, like you see, but you can't use them without having some specific modules enabled. So if you're looking for templates to support the most common requirements, like POs or requisitions, you're not going to find anything. Now, GL is the one that's the most popular. You can see there aren't all that many templates there, but well, 3 of them are only for currencies, but the journal entries one there has been around forever. It's very popular. It gets a lot of use. And then there's GL budgets in there as well nowadays. In the EAM, there's 2 integrators that don't really carry a lot of functionality with them. So you're probably going to need custom development to flesh those out properly. And advanced pricing, again, it's a bit barren. A couple of templates, not a whole lot of functionality. Unless you have very basic needs and your ERP remains really static, you're pretty limited in what you can do with them. And if you need to augment the uploaded data, that's a problem, isn't it? As soon as you need to go into the forms to add bits and pieces, you've kind of defeated the purpose of using Web ADI in the first place. So the trouble with Web ADI can be broken into 3 main complaints, really. The first is that with the seeded offerings, most of the data entry we need support for is missing. And that means you'll be looking at expensive, complicated custom templates to fill the gaps. And that's going to take a lot of time, patience, and resources to make work. The second is that with the templates you have, there are challenges and limitations. Lots of switching in and out of Oracle and the spreadsheet during the upload. No customized validation. And no facility for extensions to allow your business rules to be inserted into the process. The status on the sheet doesn't always necessarily reflect what really happened. Often you're only seeing partial validations. And there can be an element of confusion. You have multiple templates for the same type of operation. So which one do you use? And then to change anything on them, even just the position of the columns, you'll need customizations to modify the integrator. And that all requires technical resourcing. And then the last big complaint is the one we just mentioned earlier, patching and upgrades. And there are some real issues here when it comes to patching, either to Oracle or to upgrades to Excel. Oracle ceased support for EBS earlier than 12.2. So if you're on 12.1.3 or still on 11i, you're basically on your own when Web ADI breaks down, or if you need to make any changes to your Excel setup. In 11i, or 12.1, Web ADI is actually only certified for Excel 2010. So if your company is going to move to Office 365 or needs to change your Office installation or set up at all, you're quite stuck. And unfortunately, the only the only advice you're going to get from Oracle is to upgrade your entire Oracle instance. Now, on the usability side, we can highlight one of the main problems with the load by walking through the workflow. And this is a real example I had, which illustrates it. So I downloaded the template, and I entered in my data, which is a little painful to do with the search list windows all having to load individually. But eventually I got my data loaded, entered, and then I clicked on upload. And back came the green successful load responses. And sometimes these are little happy faces. But they don't necessarily indicate a good result. They just flag that a particular part of the process didn't break down. So I have to go and monitor the results. But this only tells me the status of the job. To really check what happened, I need to see the details. And for that, I need to go into Oracle, look at the output, where I learned that the green result or the happy face doesn't reflect reality. And that's that my data did not load. So I have a job now to do between the application and the spreadsheet to get my data in shape that Oracle's going to accept. And with patching, again, this problem keeps coming up. It's a big one. And over time, it might be likely to kill off Web ADI as a viable tool within your organization, particularly any companies on older versions of Oracle that have fallen out of support. This again is a real scenario. And now when I get an error in Oracle, the first thing I do is go to Oracle support. And if I'm lucky, I'll find a note and I might get excited. Maybe I found the solution for my version. Good. It tells me what the problem is. And the solution is there. This is what you have to do. Step 1, download the patch, apply the patch. It tells me everything. But that last line is the one that's going to kill you. If you have any custom layouts, they're gone. And it happens all the time that you invest time modifying things in WebADI, and you have to apply a patch, and it might be completely unrelated to WebADI or even this area, and things go south. And when the end users end up calling you up, they'll be saying, whoops, I've gone too far. They'll be saying, it's broken. And they'll expect you to fix it and fast. And that's not going to happen. You'll need to get IT involved, rework all your custom templates to get moving again, if you're lucky. We need fast data entry tools, but we need to be able to use them when we need them. And if WebADI isn't reliable, we're not going to be able to trust it. So custom development isn't really helping us. It's holding us back. But since we're talking about custom template development, it's worth taking a moment to consider the process there. This is a diagram from one of the Oracle support documents. And even Oracle can't really paint a picture that avoids highlighting the complexity involved. Developing templates is likely to be slow and costly. IT will need to be involved, and you'll probably expect multiple iterations of development to accomplish what you're trying to achieve. The maintenance and support is generally likely to be dependent on 1 or 2 people, or perhaps a consulting company. So it's going to be a bottleneck and possibly an expensive one. You want to change your template, you need to call those people. You want to add a field, call again and wait. You want to start using DFFs, call and wait, and so on and so on. And then once you've got it running and implemented, that issue of patching comes back. Basically, you're turning yourselves into a development company rather than focusing on your core business. So rather than do all that, it's worth considering More for Apps. More for Apps is a development company. And so we've done everything for you already. And the More for Apps solutions are aligned exactly to how you would intend to use WebADI, but without all those negative aspects we've been talking about. So simple processing with built-in upload and download, and completely pre-configured from reusable spreadsheet. Like I said, we've branded our EBS solutions under the EBS Toolbox banner, and this is our suite of pre-configured spreadsheet loading tools aligned with eBusiness Suite. They offer the same approach as WebADI, which is data loading direct from Excel. But the comparison ends there because there's much more to them than that. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a few moments. But first, I'll zoom in a little and we'll look at what is supported by the product suite. This is a breakdown of the main tools offered in each area of the application. It's not exhaustive. There are some smaller tools that aren't here. They're quite niche. But you can see that the compared to WebADI, there's support for loading data across the whole ERP. It's not just niche tools that aid a particular task, but it's a comprehensive suite that covers master data, invoicing, ordering, and transactional processing. You'll just select the tools you need. You don't need to commit to anything more than you require, and you can upscale to other areas when those needs come up. We'll see what it looks like in the next slide, but before that, there's some key features listed here. It's worth emphasizing the top 2. All the tools in the suite are designed to work for the data users, not the IT resources. We want to try and reduce the dependency on that. There's no config needed. So once they're installed, you can start loading your data straight away. And that third one is a big one too. You can download data directly into the spreadsheet from Oracle. And that's a next level feature when it comes to updates or data replication. In the second list, the second one is the big one for any WebADI conversations. No impact from patches. So if you patch or upgrade either on the Oracle or the Excel side, your More for Apps tools will continue to work. There's no need for virtual machines old versions of Excel installed in Citrix, anything like that. It doesn't matter whether you have 11i or the latest 12.2 version or whatever version of Excel you're using. And that leads to that second to last point there. Web ADI doesn't cost you anything up front with licensing, but those problems around patching come with hidden costs tied into them, and you won't be able to predict them. With More for Apps, you can put everything directly in your plan and budget, and you'll just have a fixed cost of annual support or subscription fee. And that last one I'll just underline as well. The More for Apps tools use the Oracle public APIs, or the public interface mechanism. So all the data you upload will be supported by Oracle under the terms of your license contract. So this is what they look like. This is the customer wizard we're using as an example. And you can see that all the functionality sits within Excel. And you can still use all your Excel features. So the standard menus are still there. And you can use copy and paste formulas and all of those features. But added to that is the More for Apps functionality. And there are some tabs for each product. The most interesting will be the one with the product name. In this case, it's Customer Wizard. And within that, there are buttons to manage your interaction with Oracle. So here's the login button. And you'll be prompted for a user and password and responsibility to set the security for your Oracle session there. Now, the most interesting controls are in the center here. You can validate your data without invoking a load to Oracle to ensure that the data set is clean, just to give you a strong sense of confidence in your data accuracy and integrity. And then the main feature is this one. You can upload the data directly from the spreadsheet. And this will also invoke that validation process, so everything's going to be trustworthy when it reaches Oracle. And then the download one. This is the bit that brings so much power and versatility, and it takes you into the next league compared to Web ADI, Data Loader, and all of those. Download your data from Oracle, inspect it, make changes, replicate it, apply Excel formulas, all of that, and send it back to Oracle with the upload button. So you can see over on the left there, the green, that all the feedback comes back to the sheet. Those green results are indicating that a particular API has executed successfully. And you can see the results for the whole data hierarchy are in the same sheet. So in this example here, we've got customers, contacts, addresses, sites, and site users, the entire customer structure. Any errors would have come back in red, and you'll have messages explaining the nature of the problem. So there's no ambiguity of how you might resolve them. It's much smarter than Web ADI in that respect. There's no happy or sad faces or fake happy faces. It's just meaningful information. And it's quite hard to show it in a static image, but each of these results corresponds to a section of columns in the worksheet. And I'd need to scroll over to the right, see them. But the point I'm trying to make is that all of the data collection is in one sheet. So there's no linking to other worksheets or anything fiddly like that. There's proper end user data validation. You can use these data forms to carefully manage your data values. And there's drop downs and search buttons behind those controls to align you with your Oracle validation rules. It's much easier to use than Web ADI because you can see them all in one place. There's not individual fiddly validation controls that need to load each time. Now, most of the tools use APIs and will directly upload the new records or updates to Oracle without any follow-on steps. But there are some examples of interface loads, like our AP invoice wizard. And where that method is employed, you can rest assured that the whole process can be managed from within the worksheet. There's no need to go into Oracle, perform any actions. So we have a button up here in the ribbon to monitor our imports. And this form lets us view the progress and results as they come back. But more than that, we can inspect the detail. There are buttons in each row, so I can see the log and the output. There's no need to go into Oracle to see any of that stuff. On the security side, I mentioned earlier that you logged in with your EBS credentials, and that ties the Oracle security to your Oracle session. And your selected responsibility will govern your access or your restricted access or your lack of access You're going to be able to use single sign-on, and the spreadsheets come digitally signed. That's your preference. There's no install needed on the end user machine, just Excel. So there's no security issues on that side. And that last point really is just to emphasize what I already said about the touch points to Oracle. They're all public APIs or interface tables. So you will remain fully compliant with your Oracle support obligation. And this is a high level comparison between the main Oracle entry methods, the end user forms, the web ADI and data loader, which still seems to be part of the conversation in our tool. And the blue tick boxes are what we're striving for. And that's pretty small. And there's a bit to digest there, but the main points for this discussion today are at the bottom, where you see the red circles in the web ADI column. Most notably those ones around patches and upgrades. With web ADI, each time you do an upgrade or a patch, it just keeps breaking. So that second to last point becomes a bit of a headache. To maintain the solutions with web ADI, especially the custom solutions, it's going to cost you time and money. So to think of web ADI as a free tool can be a bit disingenuous at times. There's no upfront cost, but that is not the full picture on the costing side. And sometimes a little upfront cost can save you a lot of expense further down the track. So the ultimate key win is better business performance, reduced costs, more reliable data and reliable data processing methods, better business insight and confidence. And that's what we're all striving for. But that brings us to the end of the PowerPoint, Death by PowerPoint for today. And I think we've got quite a bit of time now for questions. So I'm going to open up the discussion to everybody. And Stephanie, hopefully you can help me because I don't know if I can see them, but I'll do my best to give any answers. And if I can't answer anything myself, I'll take that question away and make sure the right person in More for Apps comes back with a response for you all.
Yeah, absolutely. So Andrew, we do have a couple questions. I will ask them to you in the order that they come in. So as Andrew mentioned, please go ahead and put them into the Q&A portal. You can also use the chat if you'd like, but we are going through the Q&A portal first. So the first one for you, Andrew, does this need macros? And is this a SaaS solution?
So you don't need to add any macros. The EBS products that we sell, as opposed to our cloud products, run as a VBA project. So what you'll be getting is an XLSM file, the macro-enabled format for the Excel file. So you'll need to enable the macros, but you don't need to go into the macros or do anything like that. It's worthwhile just putting them in a trusted location, perhaps on your desktop under the Microsoft Office trusted location setup. But yeah, it's not software as a service. It's depends on what you're talking about. Like you have an installation on your desktop. There's an installation on your Oracle side. It's not we have a subscription licensing model, but it's not a SaaS solution in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Next one, do you have templates for Oracle Property Manager specifically to load billing for leases?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. I'm probably best to take that one away. I don't have the full product list in my head. I don't know about that, but I definitely can get an answer to you.
Okay, and this is a follow-up to that first question. Looks like a plugin to Excel, correct? Is there an online version of this? We are very concerned with security, and one of our requirements is to limit Excel functionality to a minimum. We'd prefer a SaaS product.
Yeah, I can see that question. It's not a plugin. As I said, it is a VBA project within the spreadsheet file, but in the same way that Web ADI has that built into it as well. So it's not a whole lot different on that sort of technology layer to Web ADI. We do have plugins for our cloud products, but these products have been around a while, so they use the older technology stack, which is Visual Basic.
Okay, thank you. Another one, do you do...
I can see that question. I'm not too sure what it means. Perhaps, Michael, you could expand those acronyms out.
And the question is, do you do DUO MFA? So we'll wait for Michael to explain those acronyms and we'll move on to the next questions. Okay, next one. Is there traffic possible with CoStar for IFRS 16 leases?
I think you're coming out of my pay grade, to be honest. At the moment, I'm not too sure what those things mean. Basically, I'm not sure if this will answer the question, but I'll just give you a sort of a technology stack description. So what you have on the desktop is Excel. Nothing from more for apps. Excel is there, but you have these files that we see from our website, or you get them from our sales team, and they're just spreadsheet files with macros in them. And that's the only thing that you need for anything in terms of the desktop. On the Oracle side, there is an install, depending if you're using 11i, 12.1 or 12.2, slightly different install. It's something on your application tier. So generally your web server will have something installed on it, tiny little servlet, although 11i doesn't have that. And there's a database package, but that's the only installation stuff that you have to deal with. Yeah, I'm not too sure. IFRS 16. I'm not too sure what that is. I'm sorry.
And Michael did get back to us on the acronym. So Duo multi-factor authentication is the acronyms.
Well, I don't know if I've not heard of that as being a stumbling block. So my qualified answer would be that you should be able to use that. I can get a technical resource to give you a definitive answer. But yeah, I don't know. The sign-on goes through the Oracle browser logon form. So that's where your authentication comes for your session. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure what that Duo multi-factor stuff is, I'm afraid. Sorry, Michael.
Okay, we'll follow up on that separately. All right, next question. Oracle doesn't provide API interface for a few forms. In that case, how does More for Apps work?
Well, normally if there isn't an API or an interface, we don't support it either, because the problem that we have is if we go around developing things and Oracle moves the starting and the finishing line, we end up caught out. So we don't really support things where there isn't a public API or interface. So that's just kind of our business model.
Thank you, Andrew. There's a question here about training videos to get more knowledge about how this works. Yes, we can absolutely. We'll follow up. We'll actually be sending out related resources and materials later this week. So keep a lookout for those. Okay, we have a question here. We find that Web ADI is quite clunky, specifically when loading journals. How does More for Apps compare? And do you have a wizard to support this?
Yeah, well, we have a tool called the GL wizard. Most of our products are called wizards. That's an old terminology based on how Microsoft used to, I guess, market things that were automatic. So it's a bit old-fashioned, the term wizard. But the GL wizard is basically what's the best term? It's an equivalent to the GL Journals Web ADI. It's not clunky. It isn't actually always quite as fast as the Web ADI because it has more validation in it. It's a very slight difference in performance, slightly slower than some of the stuff that goes on, but the whole user experience, the whole error feedback, all of that stuff means that clunkiness has gone away. I mean, there was a question about training videos. We do have some videos for these that hopefully we can present to you, but we would also normally, if you're interested, be quite happy to provide a demonstration to show you how these tools work in a real situation. So I would recommend that maybe you contact and we'll show you how they look in terms of clunkiness. But I'm very confident that you won't find these clunky.
Thank you, Andrew. Another question here. We have lots of issues with Web ADI crashing Excel. How does the journal upload performance compare to Web ADI?
Well, in terms of reliability, there's no issues. Depending on how you're using it, it may run slower because there's more columns within our tool and there's more basically functional support and more validation. And we normally mitigate that by asking our customers to look at what columns they actually need on the spreadsheet and just reducing them to the ones that they're actually using, because otherwise things get validated that don't need to be. But there's nothing in terms of reliability. You're not going to have Excel crash, anything like that. And it basically just interrogates row by row. So there's not even a whole lot of memory use happening. It'll go down in a chunk of 10 or so, fire them up through the API or the interface, depending on which tool it is, and then just report to the screen and clear its cache and drop the next 10 and do the process until it gets to the bottom of the list. So Excel doesn't really get any strain.
Yeah, and there's a question here similar, so maybe I missed it, but how is more for apps getting around Excel updates? This is the biggest risk we have with Oracle ADIs.
Well, we don't push the barriers within Excel. So updates haven't been an issue since year one. Once they went to ribbons and everything has been consolidated, most of the functionality within the tool has been stable since then. So that's 2007. Yeah, it's just not a strain. There's VBA calculations going on in the background to do with how the data is manicured for Oracle, but you're not going to find that there's anything that's going to strain Excel. And we support all versions of Excel right up to the current one. We say we only go back to 2007. You can use older versions, but we might complain if you came back with a problem around the toolbars, because we don't necessarily support the toolbars anymore. But there's no issues with Excel. The only limitation is that because the tools are using Visual Basic, you can't use the web versions. And I don't think you can use them on an Apple. So it needs to be a desktop version, any version right up to today's version. Yeah, no problems. But you can't do it through online Microsoft Office.
All right, thank you. Keep moving here. We're looking for software that can do reporting and load data into Oracle EBS, but we cannot do and do not want to enable macros. Is this a feasible solution for us?
Well, if you're not going to, yeah, probably you're going to run into a problem if you don't have an open mind to macros, because the tool uses the Visual Basic project, which is effectively a macro. It's locked, so you don't have to invite your users to be able to create their own macros, but they will be running VB code. So if you don't have an open mind to that, you might find that we're not going to be the answer.
Okay, we have a question here about getting a list of available wizards. Yes, we'll do a follow-up separately about that. Everything that we have in our EBS toolbox. Okay, we have a two-part question here. Does the dependent LOV list of values work in this plugin? If we want to use this through iSupplier and extranet, does it work?
Well, I don't know what the dependent list of values you're talking about is. I'll just generally answer the questions around list of values. So you saw there was an edit form that popped up when I did the screenshots. So those validation lists that are behind all those controls are sourced when I do my login. So if I log in as a HR user with a particular organization that's American or English language, it's going to go and run off lookups, and well, if it's a lookup validation list, and bring back the Oracle supplied validation list from that. So it's all dynamic. There's nothing stored in the spreadsheet. It's to do with my user session that's populating those labs. So the dependencies on that side are handled automatically by the dynamic nature of the login security. But I don't know particularly what the dependent log you're talking about there is. They're all built into the process. So that's all part of standard product. In terms of the iSupplier, we do have a loader in the iSupplier area. I'm not that familiar with that one. Probably best to get a follow-up session or question on that. We have some support in that area. We have master data supplier, master data products. But if you're talking about software, what is it called, where people do self-service, there are some tools. I mean, iSupplier loader, but it's not one that I know that well to answer, I'm afraid. But I'm sure Stephanie can get that question back to you, Anil.
Yep, we'll absolutely do a follow-up specifically on that. Okay, a couple more questions here to go. Andrew, have you seen any performance problems with multiple Excel workbooks open at the same time?
Not typically performance problems. There are a couple of limitations with VB, and then with Excel, it doesn't like you to open multiple files with the same name. That's standard Microsoft Office. issue. We sometimes recommend when people start to get a bit cautious about what's happening to disable some plugins. I'm not too sure which ones. There occasionally is a clash with some of the like third-party software that has an Excel add-in. It's not common, but in terms of Excel, we have people using 50 different sessions. Well, not 50, 15 different sessions at the same time, and they working happily. Quite often when we go to a customer call, we just see all the Excel icons in the taskbar, and yeah, they're happily working.
Okay, we have a question here about, will we have a recording of this webinar? Yes, absolutely. We'll send a recording of the webinar. The slide deck that you saw today in the presentation, the poll question results will include as well. And we have a ton of related resources as well. So we'll send those just as a standard webinar follow-up. And then you'll also hear from a More for Apps rep individually on if there's anything else that you'd like to see or take action on. Andrew mentioned demonstrations, anything like that, we can also make available to you. Another question's here, Andrew, can you add attachments to your wizards?
Well, you can add attachments to your records. The attachment functionality is one of our standard functionalities. Where Oracle has attachments, we generally have attachments within the spreadsheet. Supplier site, they can all do attachments. There isn't a tool for just attaching and then selecting where it's going. So if you have customer wizard, for example, it'll have the attachments that you need to set up your customer master projects and so on. We don't have a attachments wizard, but those that's a piece of core functionality that's integrated within each of the tools where they're required.
Okay, another question here.
Sorry, just while I'm on that too. That supports files as well. So you can grab your file off your desktop or if your shared drive and put it into Oracle. And a lot of them can be viewed from within spreadsheet too.
Okay, great. Question here, do we offer cloud software as well? And I think you mentioned that earlier. Yes, we have.
Yeah, so we've got, I don't know how much time we want to devote with that on a Web ADI audience, but for people moving across, we do have a tool. It's called, it's a suite called ERP Cloud Toolbox. It's relatively new. It's been out for about 3 years, and we are expanding into that market. So we have procurement projects, product definition within manufacturing, and what did I say? Procurement, finance.
Finance,
yep. This one.
Finance
we don't have TCA at the moment, so that we don't have master data for things like suppliers or customers, but the suppliers is on the roadmap. We expect to have something out before Christmas for that. Banking will come into that as well. We'll be really happy to give you a demonstration on that. It'll work in a similar way. Going back to what people were saying about macros, though, that there aren't macros in our cloud products, so that security issue kind of clears itself up. That one runs as an Excel add-in, so there's a bit of an install on the desktop, but it doesn't have anything like VBA to make people ponder. Those are great tools, actually. I really recommend that you take a look at them.
Okay. Is there a limit to the number of records you can upload at one time, or do I have to break it up in batches? Oh, looks like Andrew froze.
So I'm back. I'm back. Yeah, I just lost you. So I think I see the question there. Is this a question from Rick? Is there a limit to the number of records you can upload? There is not, other than what Excel's limit is, but I don't think anyone's hitting that limit these days. It's about some number of million. I mean, I would recommend that if you're doing millions, maybe your spreadsheet loading mechanism isn't the best for you, but there's no limitation from our perspective. It literally starts at the top and finishes at the end. And if you've got millions, it'll take a bit of time. So probably just minimize Excel and get on with your business, come back and check the results. But there's no limitation. The number of columns is also, God knows how wide, 64,000 columns, I think it is. That's all supported. Basically, if you can get it into an Excel grid, we'll support it.
So ERP Cloud toolbox. Will this work with Oracle EBS?
No, so they are distinct products. If I go, I don't know if I can go back to that slide. It's probably a bit awkward to do from here. There was a blue column and a pink column. They are separate. So we do have some ideas of helping people manage the two of them at once. And that's something that we'll probably be looking to roll out in an info pack. But you can't use the EBS toolbox in cloud, and you can't use cloud in EBS, and that's because they are totally different software systems. There's a totally different authentication. The whole security is different. They run off the web applications differently. They're not really compatible with one another on the Oracle side.
And do we offer a trial with the products?
So we do. So normally the way it works in terms of the sales cycle is that we'll introduce you to the product with a demonstration. And if it's something that you find you want to pursue, we will allow you, I think it's 7 days, where you have an unlimited trial license, and you just put the license into your machine and you can use it as if you're a customer. So you can do all your uploads and downloads and just verify proof of concept, for example, that your problem is solved. But that's free, and then that, at the end of that, you can just come to a decision about whether or not it's something you want to pursue, and our sales team will guide you through that. Normally 7 days is generally enough.
Yep, and there was a question about licensing, so you covered that, and we'll do follow up on that in more detail as well.
Yeah, so I'll just come back to licensing. I'm not on the sales team, so I don't want to speak for the sales team, but you will be licensed for each.
Looks like we lost Andrew again, but yeah.
Sorry, you can't hear me?
I think we dropped you again, but you're back. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know how much dropped out there. But your usage of the tool is by seat, by Oracle seat. So I'll log in as Bob and Brian and Tracy, and then I'll need 3 different seats for that.
Okay, great, Andrew. Thank you. I think we got all the questions. If you have anything else, we're at the end of Q&A. Give it another couple seconds for any additional.
I can see a question there based on licensing, in terms of how is it organized. So we're selling these tools as a subscription license. So that's a yearly renewal fee. So that's the model. So it's effectively renewed at the end of each year, and you can either increase or decrease your usage based on your requirements. And that's great if you're going to cloud. You haven't bought anything you don't need in the future.
Okay. Well, I think that's all of them. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today for the webinar. Like I mentioned before, we'll be sending out materials tomorrow, so keep a look out in your inbox for those items, plus some one-on-one outreach as well. Andrew, we wanted to thank you for the time today and presenting this information. We appreciate it, and yeah, we look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thanks everyone for taking the time to sit with us today. Hopefully it was informative, and hopefully it was worthwhile. And there's my contact details there up on the screen, so you can get directly in contact with me if I didn't answer your question correctly, or if you want to follow up. I'm happy to respond.
All right, great. Thank you. Everyone have a good rest of your day.